Madam President, while most of us were on their way to Strasbourg, Turkish President Erdogan ordered his army to start a military intervention into neighboring state Syria. Last weekend, warplanes started to bomb parts of Kurdish Syrian area in the region of Afrin, whereafter Turkish troops and tanks crossed the Turkish-Syrian border. As we speak here with the representatives of all our member states, one member state's government has started a new front in an ongoing cruel war in Syria. This assembly, which has shown our deep concern already with everything that is happening in Syria, can of course not cast a blind eye on new developments over there, which will lead to more atrocities, more wounded, more killed and more displaced citizens. Once again, a political dispute leads to a violent reaction and will add to the already huge threats of the Syrian conflict to regional and international security. I want to thank the Assembly for granting my group's request for a current affairs debate on how to deal best with these shocking new developments, and for granting me the honor to open this debate with some introductory remarks and proposals. With this military intervention of Turkey into Syria, we are entering a new phase in Syrian war, which has already costed so much life and so much civilization. First, we had, as a part of the so-called Arab Spring, peaceful uprising against the lack of democracy and human rights, as well as social and economic progress in Syria, followed by the brutal suppression by President Assad's regime. Then we witnessed how parts of the opposition decided to armed resistance, whereafter Islamic State used the internal chaos in Syria to create its own strongholds in the country, from where they could spread their terrorist threats throughout the world. Then we saw how foreign powers got themselves involved militarily in Syrian developments, partly at the request of the Syrian government, such as Russia, partly at the request of opposing forces, such as the United States. And a broad coalition, also led by the United States, started its own military alliance against the threat of IS, Islamic State Daesh. Thousands of civilians have been killed until now. Millions have become IDPs or refugees. Quite a lot of them are now seeking shelter in our member states. And instead of contributing to the restoration of order and peace, Turkish authorities now put extra fuel on the fire by starting a unilateral military intervention into Syria. Madam President, how should we measure this unilateral decision and its effects over there in the region and worldwide? In general, international law prohibits states from using military force on the territory of another state. The Charter of the United Nations states in Article 2.4, I quote, "All member states shall refrain in their international relations from the threat of or use of force against the territorial integrity of a political independence of any state or in any other matter inconsistent with the purposes of the United Nations." End of quote. Madam President, there are only three situations where this general prohibition can be lifted. One, a state can be invited by another state to assist it in maintaining or restoring domestic peace and security. Two, a state can be mandated by the United Nations Security Council to use force in order to restore or maintain international peace and stability, Article 42. And three, a state may exercise its rights to self-defense, Article 51. The first two conditions are obviously not met. Syria explicitly opposes the Turkish military intervention, and there is no mandate whatsoever of the United Nations Security Council, which has only started to discuss the recent events. The Turkish government also does not base its intervention on these two possibilities, but states that its unilateral military action is related to the right to self-defense. Already between August 2016 and March 2017, Turkey militarily intervened in Syria with its Operation Euphrates Shield. Then too, its actions were justified as self-defense against the shelling of Islamic State of Turkish territory. But in practice, almost all military strikes were not directed against Daesh, but against the Kurdish YPG the militia of the Democratic Self-Administration of Rojava in northern Syria, de facto independent from the Syrian government in Damascus. The now started operation, called Olive Branch, is portrayed as a needed reaction to the direct, huge and immediate threat to Turkish security. However, until now, no proof at all has been given by Turkey for this position. On the contrary, the region which is now under Turkish fire, Afrin, happens to be one of the few places which has managed until now to stay outside the violent clashes in Syria. Therefore, it has become a place of shelter for thousands of IDPs from the rest of Syria. In a series of statements, President Erdogan has made it perfectly clear that this military intervention has other goals than self-defense. Already in October last year, he stated in the Russian press that Turkey was ready to launch a large-scale military operation in northern Syria and even to annex Manbij and Raqqa to its areas of influence to prevent the establishment of a Kurdish state. It's clear that President Erdogan is completely opposed against the development of a Turkey on Turkey's southern border of an ever more autonomous Kurdish region in Syria. But in no way, Madam President, international law allows him to oppose this political development in his neighboring state by military intervening in that state. Neither can this military operation be seen as a short and a quick reaction to an immediate threat. Turkish authorities have made it clear that its army is entering northern Syria to stay there. Prime Minister Yildirim stated that the aim of the military intervention is to establish a 30-kilometer safe zone deep in Syria. The self-administration of Rojava intends in no way to give the Turkish army free access to its territory. Thus, a violent clash seems not to be avoided. Already several people have been wounded and killed, people are on the run, and structures have been destroyed by Turkish warplanes and tanks. Overall, instability in Syria and the region will grow again, and security will again be further undermined by this Turkish unilateral operation. At the same time, Turkish military intervention against the Kurds in Syria will upset the Kurdish communities in Turkey as well. Since President Erdogan jeopardized the peace process between the Turkish authorities and the Kurdish communities in his country on the eve of the 2050 parliamentary elections, suppression of Kurdish citizens in Turkey has enormously increased, with continuous attacks against communities and its representatives, among which the elected parliamentarians of Turkey's third biggest party in parliament, HDP. We can expect that the longer the intervention into Syria lasts, the more violence is used, the more internal tensions in Turkey will grow and lead to new explosions of violence over there. We already heard President Erdogan say that those in Turkey who want to use their fundamental rights of freedom of gathering and expression to oppose his military intervention will pay a high price. Such language violates Turkey's obligations as a Council of Europe member state under the European Convention and increases the fears that we will have a new round of human rights violations in our member state. Madam President, now we should act as we did in the past. We reacted several times to the crisis in Syria and how this Council of Europe could be of any help to the citizens there and to protect also international security. Therefore, I would appreciate if you would comment, I would appreciate if the colleagues would comment on the following 4 proposals which I want to give to you. 1, to call upon the Turkish authorities to immediately stop its military intervention into Syria and to respect the Charter of the United Nations and to look for political ways to solve political problems, including security needs. 2, to call upon Council of Europe member states to use their influence in the United Nations Security Council to have, as soon as possible, United Nations Security Council resolution demanding the end of hostilities and immediate withdrawal of the Turkish army from Syrian soil, and to call specifically upon those Council of Europe member states which now do have a seat in the Security Council to support such a resolution. 3, to call upon the Council of Europe to use all its possibilities of the Committee of Ministers, the Assembly, Secretary General and the Human Rights Commissioner to convince our member state, Turkey, that this unilateral military intervention violates the Charter of the United Nations and the values and principles of our organization. And lastly, 4, Madam President, to call upon the Turkish authorities and the Turkish Kurdish community to restart a peace process which was jeopardized in 2015, but which is, according to a resolution 1925 in 2013, according to this Assembly, and I quote, "the obvious way forward in ending violence and creating a peaceful environment for the solution of the Kurdish question." Madam President, I'm looking forward to the comments and the reactions of the colleagues on these 4 proposals. Thank you very much.